Heresy! Destroy it!
Heresy! Remove this filth!
Alright, here I am again on this awful website, and I'm here this time to talk about Stannis, but I just want to say real quick that I apologize for the inconsistency in uploads. I've mainly just been lazy, to be honest, but I have a horrible router and an ancient network adapter, which is very off-putting to making content, if I'm being honest. My old adapter has just been degrading worse day by day, and it disconnects every 5 minutes, and it's made it pretty much impossible to use the internet, and thus upload or render literally anything. And unfortunately, my last video didn't gain as much traction, but I'm gonna keep making videos for the people who watch me, because I do find this to be genuinely entertaining, despite the infuriating roadblocks I run into during the editing process. Okay, I admit, I suck ass at editing, and that's like the source of 90% of my problems doing these videos. But anyways, onto the man, the myth, the one true king, Stannis the goddamn Manus. So, Stannis has this very sort of all-or-nothing history as a character in terms of the fandom's view on him. People seem to vehemently hate him or simp for him harder than I do. I personally think most people who hate Stannis hate him because they've never read the books and judge him on the horrible, no good, very bad portrayal of him by Dumb and Dumber. That's not to say Stephen Dillon was bad in the role. I believe he was actually great, but he clearly was only given so much to work with. But we're not here just to debate D&D. That's been done a million times over and by far better content creators than me. I'm here to talk about why I personally love Stannis as a character, and maybe give some insight to those who don't like him as to why many in the fandom like me adore him. So, first of all, we have to go over one of the more controversial topics in the fandom. That is the actual legitimacy of Robert's rule. Stannis fans like myself will often talk about the right of conquest, but what does that actually mean? Well, historically, if you conquer or capture or occupy an area militarily and are successfully able to hold it for long enough, well, it's yours. Now, we don't have to debate the modern-day merits or morals of this to understand that this would be very much valid in the setting of A Song of Ice and Fire. It is based largely on a late medieval period if we take into account the fact that there are those in the Vale and the more wealthy areas of Westeros that possess full plate armor, and the fact that trebuchets even exist in the setting. The right of conquest in the context of A Song of Ice and Fire, or Game of Thrones if you want to call it that, is very much valid, which would mean that Robert's reign based on Robert's rebellion is definitely valid, especially if we take into account the fact that a ruler cannot be an effective ruler without the support of the people, and the Targaryens were very much falling out of favor by the later years of the Mad King. And although it is called Robert's Rebellion as Robert was very much the figurehead, let us not forget the reason this really started. It started because of the brutal deaths of Brandon and Rickard Stark and Aerys demanding that Jon Arryn turn over Robert and Ned's heads. Although Lyanna's kidnapping, or eloping if you want to be real, got the ball rolling, it was Aerys' reign of terror that had so many people siding with the rebellion. Robert killed Rhaegar and took the throne for himself, and by the right of conquest being valid, House Baratheon became the ruling dynasty. Which means that Viserys and Daenerys have absolutely no claim by rights to the Iron Throne unless you ignore that being valid. And we see this with the fact that Daenerys is very much being built up to come back to Westeros as a conquering figure, or not even really come back, just come there in the first place considering she's lived most of her life in Essos. We see her return to her older conquering ways when diplomacy and the nice guy route fails in Meereen. So, since House Baratheon is the ruling dynasty and Robert decides to get yeeted by some fat boar,
The whore is pregnant.
and his children are actually incestuous abominations courtesy of Jaime and Cersei, then that leaves only one person who should be on the Iron Throne. Stannis the goddamn Manus. Renly being a little shit and deciding to try and jump the line of succession is irrelevant since he gets yeeted, and Robb deciding to listen to his bannermen instead of fight for Stannis was a stupid decision from the start. But with that established, we all know rights alone don't make a good king. So let's look at Stannis, at least book Stannis for the most part, and his actions. Stannis in the books, unlike the show, only burns traitors and criminals until we see his desperation get the better of him after his loss at the Battle of the Blackwater. You can hate the form of execution and see it as inhumane, but there's a big difference between burning turncoats and criminals, rather than random people. And when he does finally make the decision to burn Edric Storm, it is only after exhausting pretty much every option he had. I mean, he's witnessed Melisandre do things no one should be capable of. and he gets very desperate. He's afraid of losing the throne, and why wouldn't he be? By every law of God and man, he should be king, and he can't afford to lose. But one thing is certain. He is not some religious fanatic, and we get the sense in the books that Stannis is using Melisandre as much as she is using him. He never comes off as some fundamentalist who would burn his own daughter, and we even see him say this line when people suggest sacrificing unbelievers before the battle in the ice. "Half my army is made up of unbelievers. I will have no burnings. Pray harder." He is also a decorated soldier, and we know that he's capable more than anyone at leading armies effectively. I mean, he defeated Victarion Greyjoy in his first proper naval battle and was the person who made it possible for the Greyjoy Rebellion to be put down in the way that it was. He could have won the Battle of the Blackwater had it not been for Tyrion's wildfire plot killing half his men and destroying many of his ships, and also Edmure Tully fucking up the entire plan concerning leading Tywin and Mace Tyrell further north by Robb Stark. I mean, really, Edmure, you kind of messed the whole thing up. But he also held Storm's End for an entire year just because he was told to by his brother. He utterly refused to give in to his enemies and got to the point of eating shoe leather before Davos smuggled food through for his troops. He got no credit for it and didn't even get his family's ancestral home when it should have been his after the end of Robert's rebellion. And yet, he was thankless. He did his duty and did not give in. That is the core aspect of Stannis' character that I and so many people love. Would you rather have a weak puppet like Tommen, a sadist like Joffrey, an unpredictable ball of self-righteousness like Dany? Or a man who has an established career of not only leading his troops, but never once giving in despite the odds being so stacked against him? I don't know about all of you, but I would want a strong monarch.
Gods, I was strong then.
One who's unwilling to compromise with foreign and domestic powers that would wish to see the kingdoms eat each other alive rather than unite under the Iron Throne. Stannis is one of the only people who truly cares about duty and laws and order in a land where people backstab and kill and betray one another all the time for just a little bit of power. And we know that were he given the chance that he would destroy the corruption in King's Landing. And also what makes Stannis so appealing to me on a personal level is what also makes Jaime so appealing to me, along with characters like Zuko and Avatar and the Arbiter and Halo. And that is that he has a redemption arc. But Stannis is not a bad person. He is, however, unlikable, cold, stoic, and kind of an ass early on. But the fact that he comes around over the course of the story and says this in the end makes him such a likable and compelling character. Lord Seaworth is a man of humble birth, but he reminded me of my duty, when all I could think of were my rights. I had the cart before the horse, Davos said. I was trying to win the throne to save the kingdom, when I should have been trying to save the kingdom to win the throne. I mean, you have this man who has been underappreciated by his family and everyone his whole life, who watched his parents die as a child and forsook the gods, who nearly starved to death just to help his brother in an arguably treasonous act at the time, who took Dragonstone and only just barely missed the Targaryen siblings and their mother, who took his brother giving him Dragonstone as a slight but did his duty anyway, who destroyed the Greyjoy fleet, who only lost the Battle of the Blackwater because of a crazy plan and forces out of his control, and who answered the call of the Night's Watch because he's the only possible ruler who actually cares about the threat of the others. The king who cared. The rightful king, who has lived his whole damn life a thankless man doing hard work and being given shit by everyone, who still wants to save the people and fight the great other up in the north. He's the only one I would be comfortable with being in charge of military forces against the others, and the only monarch still in the Game of Thrones for an actually good reason. He has the right, he cares about the people, he has the experience, he's no puppet, and he's the only one who should actually sit on the Iron Throne.
This is the payment that was demanded by King Stannis for my crimes. I consider it an honest accounting.
He's an honest man, and he's your best chance to get back the money you've sunk into Westeros, which is a lot, I imagine.
Wars are expensive.
The war is over.
As long as Stannis lives, the war is not over. Who's the real power in King's Landing?
Sir Davos.
Humour me.
Tywin Lannister.
How old is Tywin Lannister?
67.
67, and when he dies, who's in command? A half-grown boy, the product of incest. Cersei Lannister, a queen whose people despise her. Jaime Lannister, a man best known for killing the king he was sworn to protect. When Tywin's gone, who do you back?
That is a problem for another time.
Begging your pardon, I think it's a problem for now. There's only one reliable leader left in Westeros. Stannis. He's got the birthright. He's in his prime. He's a tried and tested battle commander, and he doesn't just talk about paying people back, he does it.
And unlike in the show, much of the North either overtly or covertly supports him, and he's willing to do what it takes to win the kingdom and put Westeros back into a stable state. And even if he were to die, he still loves his daughter so much and supports her that he would have troops fight to put her on the throne or die trying. This is not an unkind man. This is a king who cares, and I hope I've helped you all understand why I love the character so much and why I support him being the king in the books. Even if that's looking kinda unlikely to happen. A man can dream, right? But that's enough simping from me. I hope this video isn't too short or feels incomplete. I didn't necessarily want to do an analysis on why Stannis is somehow the best option, but more so why I personally like the character and the justifications for that. I could do something more serious and more detailed in the future if anyone wants to see that. However, that's just not what this video was intended to be. And on a side note, I'd just like to give a quick shout out to a great video made by another person new to YouTube and someone I know personally, of Sundered Sun. He made a very good video on the cover art of the original Halo trilogy, and since he's a very talented artist and literally went to college to be one, I can guarantee you he notices things you'd have never thought of in his breakdown of the different cover art of these games. I'm sure he'd really appreciate it if you went and gave his video a watch. I'll link it in the description. Anyways, I'll see you all in the next video when I talk about my favorite show of all time. That is, Avatar: The Last Airbender, and the reasons why I think the Netflix version is going to be an absolute garbage fire and a complete goddamn mess. Because these two clowns are very similar to these two idiots in very many ways. But I'll talk about that next time. If you guys enjoyed this video, I'd appreciate it if you gave a like and a subscribe, and, you know, if you actually enjoyed my content, please watch my channel.